well as Soren Jensen, our VP of Solution Software, to present first starting with a case study of our Structureware DC solution as well as an update on Structureware from Soren.
Very good. Thank you, Tony. You also, Andy, are you?
I thought I'd give you a presentation for you.
So we will start this small DSEM section with a live customer case, and Dina has promised us to give us sort of her journey from the selection to the implementation to the good and the bad and the ugly and the future sort of promises. And I want to say that there's nothing like working with challenging customers that can push your technology and your thinking and the problems ahead. And when I think back of our DSEM journey over the last 5 years, it started with customers similar to Savvis who pushed the boundaries for what we could do. And actually Savvis were the catalyst for the Colo edition of Structureware. So without further ado, Dina, take it away.
Thank you. I just want to start by saying I really appreciate the invite here. For me, I've only been partnering with the DCIM side of your organizations, and so it's kind of new to hear some of the other things that Schneider does for us, even today in our data centers, and what they're doing in the market. So it's been very educational for me. So a little bit about me. I've been doing capacity management at Savvis for a little over 5 years. I've been there since 2002. A few other roles in between there. But it quickly became apparent that we needed some kind of tool to better analyze our data and to manage our capacity in our data centers. While we had tools, they had limitations, and everything was manual. So Excel was our friend. In some cases, it's still our friend. So we really wanted to get away from that and be able to better manage our capacity as well as our cooling and our power and our efficiencies in our data centers. And I think even before DCIM was really a hot market, we started down that path. It was the end of 2010. In the 5 years that I was in capacity management, I tried to put on the budget for a tool every year, and it got shot down off the first cuts. So, you know, when a company is looking at spending money or something like that, is it going to bring in more revenue? So you have a lot of proof in the pudding. So we finally turned a point where we decided we were going to change the way we deployed our data centers, and we were going to go to modular builds. Instead of building full-on data centers with full infrastructure and then have to take the time to ramp up and sell all that space and power, we decided to do it in a modular fashion. Well, with that came a need for the tool. So I finally got something that made the point that I needed this tool. So we'll kind of go through what we did from an RFI perspective, an RFP, some of the research we did to determine who was going to participate in our RFI and RFP, and how that all went in the implementation. So I kind of gave away the overview, but we'll talk about the reasons we selected a DCIM tool in the first place, which I kind of went through, the requirements that we put together for the DCIM, the selection process, as well as the Savvis deployment, and then what our implementation experiences were, both the challenges and the successes. I do want to point out some of those. So, and then we'll talk about some next steps, where we see this product going. So we determined a long time ago that our co-location products are always evolving, and our data centers are evolving, the way that we design them, the way that we support them. And we definitely needed a tool versus Excel to do some of that work. We needed real-time advanced reporting capabilities and modeling and planning and forecasting capabilities in a tool. We needed to better our efficiencies in power and cooling, and integrate a power and space tool into one tool. We had, again, disparate things, and I'll walk through those in a minute, giving us this data. So we really needed a holistic tool to give us that entire view. And we did not do connectivity mapping and infrastructure for capacity well. On the Savvis side, we did not do it at all. On the CenturyLink side, they did do a good job of it in their system. So we did have a need for that, as well as to manage at the rack and cabinet view space level. So in our cloud environments, deploying all those servers in a managed, we would call it a cage, we didn't know how much power or space we had available. We didn't know how much we could continue to sell in that space, when we needed to expand into another cage, take it away from colo. We didn't have an idea. We couldn't track things at the new position level. So what we didn't know was limiting our revenue opportunities.
I think one of the things you told me early on was that the application you actually used was developed by one of your facility people in one of your remote data centers that was doing a really good job at local planning, and that was adopted by the global organization. And it was taken over by IT, but IT was not able to maintain it or further develop it. And one day you find out this guy was actually laid off in IT, and he was stopped with something that couldn't further be developed. And it lived like that for how many years? 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, at least 3. Yeah, and that's where a good segue into the former tool set that we were using. We had these outdated and homegrown tools. The homegrown one we were talking about was our power tool. IT did take it and develop it a little further than this little text in the data center actually took it. And we rolled it out, and like Ron said, that team that implemented and drove that whole initiative was let go, and IT didn't even know what to do with it. We had all kinds of upgrades and bug fixes we needed to do, and nobody really knew where they wanted to take the tool. So it's been functioning. It never went down, which was a good thing, but still didn't give us what we needed. The other piece of that was Exodus was purchased, or Cable and Wireless purchased Exodus. Exodus had an old tool from Kaplan was the vendor, and it was called, we called it Magellan. Very old tool, if you know how far back Exodus goes. So we acquired that through the acquisitions, and that's what we had to use for our space management. And again, it had a lot of limited capabilities for the space itself. We couldn't do it at the rack or view level. It didn't do power. So it had a lot of issues. We couldn't fully represent our capacities in our data center from a space and power perspective. Had no cooling capabilities at all. So it definitely probably forced us to build data centers or expand in our data centers sooner than we wanted to or needed to. So that was an increased cost for us. The existing infrastructure and the software was not IT supported. The power tool was, but the space one wasn't. I was IT for that space tool. When those servers went down, they needed to be rebooted, we got the call. So I wanted to be out of the IT business. I wanted to do capacity management. So I was a little selfish there. But we actually had a high risk of system and data stability in those tools. We couldn't do software patches. The servers were old compact servers that this tool was sitting on that had old SQL that couldn't be updated. And I mean, we had to move it from the second floor to the first floor of our data center. We were very frightened it wasn't coming to power back up, so we just all kept our fingers crossed to do that.
It was like, wow, keeping your business.
Yes. It was long in coming, definitely. And definitely, you know, we had reporting limitations as well. You know, we could extract data and manipulate it, but a lot of manual processes around that. So, what did we do with the RFI? So, what we did is we put over 400 very detailed requirements together in these various categories that I've got listed here. And we sent those out to about 11 DCIM vendors. So how did we know who was in the market? Did a lot of research online, of course, finding out who were the top players in that market. Again, this was back in 2010, so.
You pull lots of market research along with the research.
Exactly.
Still more analyst friends.
Yeah, exactly. You all helped. So we selected 11 of the top market players, and we sent those out, got the responses back, and we evaluated those responses based on how we wanted to score them. So in our requirements, we would dictate what was a need. So I didn't want to lose any of the functionality I had today in my current set, which was very limited. So those were all prior ones. I definitely had to have that functionality. Then we had prior twos, which were, we'd really like to have this. This is a nice one, right? And then we had the blue sky. Way down the line, this would be great to have, right? And those were priority threes. So we weighted all those, and we determined and picked 4 vendors to come in and actually RFP and do demos for us at our location. Schneider, of course, we went to their location because they were local, which was really nice. They fed us really well. So the joke is, we selected them because they served us a really nice lunch.
There you go. Sure they push that back into strategy.
You should consider doing the final selection criteria was based on the weighted scoring, of course, of our priority requirements, and then the functionality. You guys were the only ones that responded in your RFI that you had things on the roadmap. Others would just respond, nope, didn't have this functionality. And so just knowing that you guys were thinking ahead with your tool and what you're going to do with it really helped us understand. And you made the final cut probably because of that. Not that, just the license and yearly costs were, of course, a big concern. We had the widest range of costs in this market than you could ever grasp. So, you know, is it the old saying, you get what you pay for? So we had to be really careful, not go with the lowest because you don't know what you're getting, but we did RFP with the lowest actually. And then, you know, do we select the highest or do we go somewhere in the middle? It's kind of like this guessing game, along with this other criteria. Enterprise solutions was a big concern for us because a lot of their pricing that was actually based on per rack or per square foot. And we knew we were too big, and the way we were growing, we really needed something that was an enterprise license solution. So that was one of the big considerations. The timeline for the deployment of the requirements was big. I mean, we wanted to purchase the tool and we wanted to get it into production. So just understanding what that timeline was a big consideration. Scalability with our growth and our products was a big concern, as well as who we're going to do business with. Are they going to be in business 5 years from now? And we really had to do some research and make sure that those were good companies. And a lot of the players were partners of ours already in our data centers. So what kind of partnerships did we have with them today? How are they going to work with us in the future? And then the integration with our other Savvis platforms was really important. We do everything so manual. We would like a lot of integration. We would like this tool to be more automated. So we have a lot of functionality there that we want to deploy in the future. So does anybody have any questions? I don't want to go too fast. I'm trying to keep it interactive.
Who are the other
Who else do you want?
I could probably tell you the top four. I can't probably name all 11, but Schneider, Archibus, Enlight, and Reckwise are the top four. So I kind of want to take the time to talk about the successes and this huge deployment that we did. This is a snapshot kind of what the tool looks like, and Soren probably has more details on that. But we're in the market to sell a lot of colo space. 70% of our data centers are the colo space, with 30% being more the managed infrastructure piece of it. But we deployed 103 separate CAD drawings into this tool. And when I say we, Schneider Electric, really deployed all those with their team and used those as backgrounds to draw all this existing space in our data centers. And that's 2.5 million square feet of space, so huge. It was huge. I can't even. I look back on it and I said, you know, by the time we started actually deploying it into the tool and when we went live, was probably about a 5-month stint.
I think it's important to say that in order to do that in such a short time, it cannot be just drop back images. It actually has to be an import wizard that actually translates the computer-aided design file into an object-based model and do that in an automated fashion. It's not people drawing this from scratch based on AutoCAD. It's actually importing it into the model directly.
And that was another big differentiator for you. We have 50 data centers globally. We're growing. Just in this tool today, we have over 300 rooms, or what we call rooms, or data centers, or phases. And of those rooms, we probably got, I think we've got 26,000, almost 27,000 racks today in there. And that's growing daily. We actually took combined data from over 10 different sources of data and had to normalize and get all that ready for import, and that was difficult in itself. And we actually replaced 3 existing tools with 100 plus users in the tool today, and these are data center guys actually using and updating the tool. Have made over 89,000 changes. That was just in March. So a lot of volume in this tool.
We went live December.
Yeah, we went to live December 7th. Yep. And that was after a full year of really getting this tool developed. Soren's side, you know, because it didn't have all this color code and cage functionality, the CAD imports, that all had to be be developed this year, so.
I think it's important to say that you actually selected us based on good faith on that these features will come.
Yeah.
And so that was part of the deal. We were committing to doing, especially on taking the existing data foundation and putting that in and make that available in just a short time. That was one of the major commitments.
Yep, absolutely. We've integrated so far with our Vanta database, which is our CMDB today, but it basically houses all of our customer information, all of our asset information. So today, we're using the customer information to assign who actually has purchased these spaces from us, or co-location, or a managed server, so we can assign it to that actual person and assign their billing account number from that other system. So that's all integrated, and we can do that. And then that helps us understand, from a finance perspective, are we, what's our dollars per kilowatt? What's our dollars per square feet in our data centers? So this is helping our finance organization as well as product from a planning perspective, for additional colo products. And like I said, this was huge. I had never deployed anything like this. I was the need. I needed this for my business. And somehow I ran the project with IT. So I learned a lot. And I learned that I never want to be on the IT side. It's a hard job. Cindy can attest to that. So this tool also came with a lot of analytics and reports, on-demand space and capacity reports showing what's sellable, occupied, reserved, which is very important for us to manage what we have available, as well as an on-demand power report. So before we weren't even really reporting power, we were doing square feet. That was all our other tool would do, and we haven't even talked about the power tool, but so we definitely got a lot of value out of what we've got so far. And we'll talk about some of the next steps because we have big plans for this tool. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about some of the implementation experiences. So they weren't all good, but we worked through them through the partnership with Schneider. I think they're committed as well as we are to this tool being a success. I had to write the business case to actually purchase this, so I have a vested interest in it being successful. So with the expectation setting and meeting the published dates, and let me just be clear on the expectation setting. I think it was on both sides. When we went down this RFI, RFP path, it was before we knew we were being purchased by CenturyLink. So CenturyLink brought in an additional volume that we weren't anticipating when you all gave us the RFP. So increased our volume significantly for what this tool is going to be capable of doing. We increased it by 16 data centers, numerous racks of equipment. So we originally said 5,000 racks. Well, you can see we're up to 26,000. So we were definitely out of scope. So with that, we didn't meet a lot of our published dates for deploying the tool. We originally were going to deploy in August, and we pushed it to December 7th. It was a good move because I think we had a lot of things we still had to work out before we deployed. Logistics of data collection and imports was a challenge. Making sure, like I said, from all these disparate data sources, normalizing it into something we could load into the tool consistently, and then just making sure that data was accurate. So you had to get to a point where you said, okay, it's as accurate as it's going to be today, and we'll have to fix it once we go live. So you had to cut it off at some point. You can spend a lot of time trying to normalize your data and make sure it's accurate before you go into a tool, but you'll never be there. The appliance was unable to keep the loads of the data. We were limited to 1,000 lines of data. So we would have these power reports that we pulled the data from our power tool, and we would try and upload them, and we realized really quickly we were limited to an amount of 1,000 lines. And some of these took 4 and 5 different spreadsheets of data just for one data center of power circuits to upload. So it was hard to keep it straight. The data was not easily accessible or accurate, and the delayed rollout it also didn't allow us to use the system day one. We had some functionality issues, some hardware issues, a lot of different issues that we had to work through. But I think a lot of that was due to the fact that none of us anticipated how big this rollout was going to be and what was really going to be needed from a platform perspective to support it.
Sorry, what do you mean by appliance exactly?
The structure appliance, the tool.
Yeah, just a server itself.
Yeah.
The server configuration, and when you do hyperscale either horizontally or vertically, we do it through nodes, or we do it through low-end hardware. So we have to find our way with the right hardware configuration using VMware. So what way do we scale it? And we had to work within the Savvis sort of limitations of their standard IT practices, so we had to accommodate for some of those constraints. So before we were able to fully scale to the 25 or 20,000 racks, it took a little bit of trial and error to get it right.
So we kind of suffered through that. We went live on December 7th, and we're expecting these data center techs to start using the tool, and every time they tried, it would crash, or it wouldn't let them log in, or whatever. So we had numerous issues, and so I think we lost our audience. So had we been better prepared, maybe even pushed the data a little bit further and did more testing, I think we would have had a more stable tool. But the initial, again, the platform configuration required modifications, and then the save issues that we had. So, more importantly, where do we want to take this?
Well, I think it's an important point on this. For everyone in this room who's been trying to do large-scale enterprise software deployments knows that when you get up to a certain limit, what used to be a small issue on a small deployment, I mean, those become really big issues that put your processes and your systems to a complete stop. And we also, with like on average like 50 to 60 concurrent users with thousands of changes almost real time, we're pushing our system to the limit. And I think what we learned the most out of this is put DSIM into a hyperscale environment. That's the biggest, single most biggest sort of learning and improvement we've done to our architecture backbone from the Savvis experience. It's a completely different thing from doing 100 rack or 500 rack deployment.
Right.
Did you have to change your processes or what kind of staff training do you have to do to accommodate this?
So we didn't really change our processes just by implementing a new tool. There was different things they had to do in the tool, like we never had the capabilities of doing rack elevations in our managed cages. So we never tracked the servers in our racks, right? So that was a new process for the DCS folks in our data centers to start doing, new function for them. They like it. They like the capabilities that we have. Now they don't have to go around their data center and search for a server for a customer that they know they need to go reboot, but they don't really know where it's at until they go look through all the lights on all the servers. So, you know, they're seeing the value in the tool, but again, it's an added step for them. For the power and space side of the quotation, same process.
So if the data wasn't accurate before, why would it be accurate in a year's time?
So we're normalizing all that data. We're working with the data centers. We're doing variance validations between the actual billing accounts that these customers have for what they purchased, and we're making sure that we're getting all that accurate.
And the one thing they told me was it's now possible to actually see where the errors are and correct them at the same time. In the past, it was really hard to be very correct it.
Right.
So I think what he's getting at is we are doing audit reports now,
Right.
and then they're going through the managed cage, and we're making sure customer A, yes, S3, yes, and we're doing those verifications, and they'll do those quarterly.
Yep. So I guess that's a new process. We're definitely making sure that that data is accurate. So some of the next steps, and I did not prioritize these, but I do want to say that collaborating on the continued software development is one of the top priorities with us as well as Schneider, to basically get something that's scalable to what our plans are for the future. We expect to grow to at least 50,000 racks by 2015. We're deploying new data centers, we're expanding, so it's just going to keep increasing. There's also a huge need for a lot of the different organizations. As people start finding out that we have this tool, there's a lot of people interested. They would like to see it, they would like to get their hands on it, they'd like to get the data out of it. So we have to be really careful, but from the finance to the product to the service teams that have to service their customers. If we have a PDU go down today, we don't really know what customers are associated to that. So we have a quick report that we can send a global list out to all those customers saying, we're going to do maintenance on this. Today we send it out to everybody, but now we'll be able to take that down to that minimal group. So cross connects, huge initiative this year. We're just in the planning phases of this, trying to gather requirements. Funny thing that we've learned is that everybody that wants this data has a different requirement for what they want out of the tool. So, or information they want in the tool. So that's going to be a huge undertaking, just gathering requirements and then feeding those back and working with Soren and team to develop the tool if we need to. Otherwise, it's got all the capabilities we need to do those cross connects. It's just Savvis getting the processes around it and making sure that what we implement and what we deploy in the tool is accurate. The ETL, this is something that's coming in our 7.3 release in a few weeks. So there's also the need to take and extract data and put it into a Savvis portal so that some of these other teams can utilize that data. So we're working towards that with the 7.3 as soon as it comes out. And then integrations with our other systems as necessary. We see Remedy integration soon, ALC, we're going to integrate with our automated logics controls. So a lot more coming in the next year or two.
Is that only for internal use?
Well, that next little point right there is the customer portal. So products very interested in this tool to be able to sell it as a element for customers to manage their space, their co-location space. So that's going to be probably a couple years out, but we do want to take it there, and products ready to give you requirements today. We're not ready for it. I don't think you guys are ready for it from a development perspective either. ALC we had in the Savvis data centers. On the other side, CenturyLink sites use data tracks to manage their systems. So we didn't have data tracks as part of the original scope, so we're going to have to make sure that we integrate with that as well, so we can get real-time utilization reporting out of our guests. So does anybody have any questions or comments?
So you started out by saying you couldn't get budget to even put any kind of DCM software before. And these kind of projects are always hard to build business cases because costs are hidden and sometimes the benefits are too. Have you been able to track any of the benefits and quantify that to validate the business case going forward? Everybody wants a piece of this, but are they paying for it in a sense, or at least giving credit for it?
Well, and that's something I didn't put on here as one of the reasons why we selected the tools. So we don't do chargebacks today to any of our internal groups. Our IT groups use a lot of our space and power in our data centers, and we don't build that group back. But this tool has the capability to do that. So once we can start doing that and quantifying that, I think we'll be able to get there and improve more the cost savings. I think we'll do a better job at planning our future space rollouts. Like I said, we've never been able to manage our managed cage space. There's another team that does the managed capacity. And they'll come to me and say, well, I'm out of space in my managed cage, I need more space. Well, that has to come away from the co-location revenue to give them that space and power. I can't wait to finally push back and say, you're not optimizing your space the way it is. You have more capabilities, to optimize your space. So I'll be able to push back there and save some money.
Will you be able to quantify that though? So
Absolutely. Yeah.
Look at your business case and say, yes, we spend more.
Absolutely.
This was really interesting. I'm just curious a little bit more about your own role. So I didn't catch your title. Like,
Yeah.
what do you report up into, and what are your own success metrics?
Good question.
And how does this help you achieve those sort of things?
Great question. So I'm the director of global co-location capacity management. So I own all the space and power in all the data centers. So I report up to Cindy Jose, who is the senior director, and she owns both the capacity management side as well as the central engineering team. And then she reports up to Joel, who is the VP of data center operations. So my team, I have 5 people. We just recently regionalized to support the data centers and get more intimate with their actual capacity. So before, we actually have a role, it's called feasibility process. So any new deals that sales wants to sell from a co-location perspective, we review those, and we do have a tool to do that, which we'd like to integrate with. So we review those. There's certain criteria from a product perspective that they have to follow, and we validate that, and then we send those off to the data centers to really get the final sign-off that they can support the space and power. So we do that function So we have to know what our capacity is, and it helps to see that visualization of those data centers. A lot of the tools that we looked at were straight databases, so it was really hard to visualize what we really had. So this gives us a better view, which is again why we went the CAD layouts and the space views. So the success of my team is really driven by how we respond to those feasibilities. The accuracy of our reporting is very important to the company. So again, I have this need from this tool to make sure that I can accurately report capacity and manage it and help trend and show product when we need to expand in certain markets. So,
Got it. Thank you.
I don't know all your names, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Not my-
go.
In terms of cost, did it meet your expectations? I appreciate that your requirements changed, but can you just give me some color around, you know, the cost of the actual solution itself and your expectations?
Go ahead.
Can I share that? They actually came in a lot higher, and we worked with them, and knowing that they had to develop a lot of this functionality that we were, you know, going on a limb here and taking your promises here. They lowered it, and we bought the software for $1.5 million.
Approximately 35 to 40% of that was services. 35 to 40% was services.
And just as a supplementary to that, how does the enterprise license work? I mean, as you roll it out to more data centers or the number of racks goes up, is it covered or?
It's unlimited.
For those modules that they purchased.
Right. Yeah.
Then the modules.
How much of the data feed is automated right now versus how much is manually driven or uploaded over specific points in time?
So everything that we do in the tool today, the data centers for updates, is manual. So when they do an install, they install a customer, they build out a page, they go in, they update the tool, they assign it to that customer, and set its tag, is what we call them, that says that's installed. When we get the ALC integration, that'll be automated data feeds from ALC for utilization readings on all the PMNs and UPSs. So that will definitely be automated. Like I said before, we would like to get our quoting tool integrated as well, so that it could automatically feed when an order books and update the tool. But that's definitely a future as well.
And when you say manual, is it somebody going into the system and manually uploading it, it's not just set up by script or anything like that?
Yeah.
I have another question on pricing, if you're able to share. At what point are you gonna pay them more money? I mean, if you're doubling from 25,000 racks to 50,000, you know, is it new modules, new functionality? I'm just curious, at what point would your contract scale as well?
So we have our maintenance costs, our yearly maintenance costs that we pay. But if we want new functionality, like some of these other things that we're going to have to scope out, that'll be, of course, that'll come with the cost. It's a new phase rollout for this tool.
Yeah, so it's a traditional enterprise sort of subscription service that has renewal every year of 18%.
Got it.
Plus any additional new modules that they choose to enable will be installed.
And just curious, what might, you kind of touched on this, but maybe it might, just so I have the right notes, what might be some of those new modules or new capabilities for?
I think, you know, it has the capabilities of PUE, which we haven't even gone down that path yet, but it definitely has those capabilities from an energy efficiency, the carbon, some of the other things that you guys mentioned. We've talked about a web interface tool to give to sales that they could take their iPads out and be talking to customers and actually get a view of the data center floor so the customers can see it without actually being in the tool and actually having access to a lot of that proprietary information.
Well, the code of customer-facing feature sets is still on the program.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're using it really as a primarily capacity tool rather than a data center day-to-day management, looking at cooling, looking at power.
So today, just because we've just implemented it, we're mainly just focusing on the guys starting to use it and get familiar with the tool. But it has those capabilities, and that's what they should be using it for, to really manage their data centers with it. For me, it's more of a capacity tool, right? So it does have all that functionality. The cooling, we didn't touch on a lot of the cooling. We didn't implement a lot of that in this phase because it was really, the first implementation was to replace our space and power tools. So we focused on that. We didn't want to boil the ocean, although when we deployed it, everybody wanted us to boil the ocean. But, you know, we didn't want to bite off more than we could chew, and I think we definitely bit off enough. So, but it has that capability, so seeing the cooling and how that's balanced in the data center.
So should I ask, do you make money on this thing? You don't have to answer that.
Of course.
How many bodies did you have to dedicate to the project over the year, do you think, internally? FTEs?
So, I probably had 2 on the capacity side, and then IT had, I started with 2, they ended up with 1. And then Troy helped, so probably 4 dedicated, yeah. If you don't count myself.
So what is,
So maybe 5.
Yeah.
what is the role of those CAD drawings you imported? What is the visual interface now is presumably the structure where 2D interface or 3D, not the CAD drawings that you loaded, so that was
Right.
to collect the data.
Yep. And we're still, I think 7.3 ready functionality to export into PDF or back into, well, we're still working on the CAD piece. But we want the capabilities of exporting that back into CAD or another function to provide those drawings to customers or sales or whoever needs them.
So StructureWare replaces the former CAD tools.
Awesome.
Another thing I just want to mention is it makes it sound like we custom developed StructureWare for Savvis, which is not the case. There's none of the features we built for Savvis that is not generally available. So it's completely sort of industrialized and productized and still available to be being sold to a lot of similar sort of customers, etc. Excellent, thank you very much. So it's been a really interesting journey.